There are a lot of great things about living in St. Augustine, but there are definitely some bad things. And if you're considering relocating to the St. Augustine area, you're going to want to make sure to watch this entire video. What's up, everyone? My name's Thomas with Real Broker here in St. Augustine, Florida. And if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest here in northeastern Florida, make sure you reach out to me and my team. All we try to do is give you the information so that you can make an educated decision on what you want to do, which is buy, sell, or invest here in northeastern Florida. So in today's video, I'm actually contrasting a prior video I just did and just giving you the 5 reasons that I wouldn't move to St. Augustine, and these are going to compile some of my clients' personal reasons why they wouldn't come here, and also some of my own as well. So some of the topics that we're going to cover here today, of course, is going to be like the weather, it's going to be the schools, also we're going to talk about family and friends, which I think is the biggest point for this whole entire video here, and we're also going to talk about the tourism and the cost of housing here in our area. So I want to start with the biggest one, and I think this is something that you can't replace anywhere you go, and I've actually had clients move to St. Augustine and then decide, you know what, I think I want to move back, and that's because their family and friends aren't here in the area. Now, St. Augustine's a beautiful town. There's a whole bunch of pros of living here, but that's something that you can't replicate, you can't reproduce in any type of way, is your family and friends, right? So if you've grown up in a certain area and you have your people, right? You have the people that you see every day, the friends that you've had since high school or maybe college or even longer than that, you can't reproduce those friends here, and especially when you move to a new area, you are trying to make new friends, right? But are you going to be able to have the same relationships, the same type of camaraderie with people that you have with the people that you have back home, with your family and friends that you've known for 20 years, 30 years, you have inside jokes, all that kind of stuff. That's just something that's really, really hard to replicate. And even though St. Augustine's great, I know a lot of people have this, pie in the sky mentality when it comes down to relocating, retiring, moving to a new area, starting off fresh. But that is something that I think a lot of people overlook, and that is such a big hurdle to get over. And even speaking personally, both me and my wife, I was born in New York, but I grew up here primarily. So I have friends in the Northeast and I have friends down here. But my wife primarily grew up in New Jersey and, spent all of her life within the New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania area. So all of her friends are really in that pocket, and they're friends from high school and her girlfriends from college that she doesn't really get to see anymore. And I know that's one of the biggest hinge points here, where she's like, maybe we should move back to Jersey, maybe we should do this.
Your decision.
And then we look at houses in Jersey, and then we kind of just take that down a notch, because the prices there, the taxes there are way different than what we're seeing here in northeastern Florida comparatively for what you get. Now, I think this is also an important point about relocating to a new area, especially a tourist town, a vacation spot like St. Augustine, is that those friends and family, they're more than likely going to visit you a good bit, because not only are you in the nation's oldest city, not only are you a stone's throw from Jacksonville, but you're also pretty close to Orlando and Disney, Universal. Especially if you have friends with kids and everything like that, they're going to make the trip down, and they're going to want a place to lay their head. If they're not going to stay in those type of areas, they can just come and crash at your house, or maybe go out to dinner once in a while. So that's really one of the saving graces of moving to a town like St. Augustine that already has it's already a tourist destination. It's a place where people want to vacation and go to, is that it's a pretty easy layup to tell your friends and family, like, hey, come on down and visit me here. We live in a great area. We're 2 hours from Disney. We're only an hour from Jacksonville International Airport. You can fly right in there. I'll pick you up. We'll have a great time with your friends and family in downtown St. Augustine, or the beach, or whatever that is that they like to do within northeastern Florida or central Florida. You pretty much have access to. And that is one thing to mention, is if you do make the move, that first year you're going to have people who are pretty much booking you like an Airbnb and be like, okay, hey, we're going to come on this date. Are you available then? Great. Okay, we'll be there.
Because you see,
and they're going to use your house as a stopping point for sure. The second reason that you may not want to move to St. Augustine is going to be the schools. Now, ironically enough, this is one of the reasons that a lot of people move to this area. We have the #2 school district within the entire state of Florida, and we used to be #1. But is there a reason that we went from #1 to #2? As of right now, over 70% of the schools within St. Johns County are A-rated schools, which in all honesty, everything here in Florida is ranked from A to F, A being the best, F being the worst, and we don't have any schools that are under the grade level of C. And 70% of our schools are rated A. So it really leaves a little point, a couple of B and C schools throughout, the rest of the county, but the majority of them are going to be grade A schools. But I believe there's a little bit of trouble in paradise. Now, we've covered this in many other videos, but a lot of people have relocated to our area, and especially since the COVID-19 pandemic, that really set some, put some gas on the fire, so to say, and a ton of people started moving here, which had to spur a lot of development in the northern part of St. Johns County. That also led to overcrowding. It also led to higher prices here in the area. So I don't know if this is exactly like a correlation or a causation, but if you look at that, one of the main complaints here in St. Johns County is going to be teacher pay. We actually don't pay as much, even though we are the number 2 ranked school district in the entire state of Florida. We actually don't pay as much as other school districts in Duval County, just north of us, Putnam County, just west of us, and Flagler County, just south of us. So why would you want to live, work here in St. Johns County versus those other areas when the cost of living in all of those areas I just mentioned is much lower than St. Johns County, but you're also going to get a higher pay. So we're actually seeing good teachers that are really frustrated with what's going on here in the county. They're going to start to leave and go to other places, and we've seen that as a response to what's happened here these past couple years. With the influx of people, we've also had stories of overcrowding. Now, I can't remember this offhand, but I think the student to teacher ratio for high school is like 1 to 22. So I'm not sure, is that a 1 to 25 ratio? Is that a 1 to 40 ratio? I'm not exactly sure what they mean by overcrowding. Is there a couple of kids that are extra in class that is messing up that student teacher ratio? 1 to 25, I don't see a problem with that. If it's 1 to 30, we got a problem. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I know, especially within the northern part of St. Johns County, where a lot of the development's going on, where they're building new schools left and right. They just opened 2 this year, 1 in Shearwater and 1 in Beacon Lake, that they've had some overcrowding issues. Hopefully those 2 developments help out with that. But that could also be another reason why we went from number 1 to number 2 in such a short period of time. Now, in all seriousness, being number 2 out of, I think there's 60-something school districts within the state of Florida, that's a pretty great ranking to have. But is this a sign of a further down, moving further down on the list? Maybe go number 2 to number 5, right? Is that because of what's happened here these past couple years? I don't know, but I think you should know about it. Now, this is another thing that you may not like about the schools here, and honestly, this is just how it is in Florida. And if you're not from Florida, you're not going to understand this, but they have trailers as classrooms here in St. Johns County and a lot of areas in Florida. They're nice, they're portable, they move them in, they set them in place, and they have air conditioning. They're completely comfortable. I went to several of them when I went through the public school system here. But if you're coming from another area, you kind of look at that and you're like, that's kind of trashy. I don't like that. But in reality, that is just par for the course here in Florida. It's been there since I was a kid. When I was in elementary, 4th and 5th grade, both of those classes were in trailers at R.B. Hunt Elementary School. R.B. Hunt Elementary School is one of the top elementary schools in our area, and it didn't affect my education whatsoever. If anything, I thought it was kind of cool that we left the main building and we got to go to like these outside buildings, being kind of like the seniors, 4th and 5th grade.
Well, you better believe that's a paddling.
Of the elementary school, but I was a kid. What do I know? But if you're moving here and you have kids, you could see that and you're like, why don't they just build an addition? Why don't they make more room in other areas? And that's all coming, right? So I still think in R.B. Hunt they have all the trailers. They haven't changed anything since I was a kid. In a lot of the other schools where they have a lot bigger of a campus than R.B. Hunt does, they are adding additions to schools where they are seeing overcrowding, and they know they need to do that. But in the meantime, there's more than likely going to be a trailer on campus, and your kid might be going to one of those trailers for school. Now, if you're not from here, it's completely abnormal to you, but if you're from Florida, it really is. It's not something to be alarmed about. The third reason that you may not want to move to St. Augustine is going to be the tourism. Now, like I said before, we live in a place that people want a vacation, and I really feel that we live in a great place, but at the same time, that doesn't come without any frustrations, right? Being a tourist city, there are a lot of headaches, such as traffic and congestion, such as wait times at a restaurant, such as prices. They're really looking at things and they're like, hey, well, we can charge these guys from out of town 2 times what we can charge the locals because they can afford it. So it's really changed a lot of what your life is here in downtown St. Augustine and the surrounding areas around the beaches because of the influx of tourism that comes through a seasonal pattern. On the other hand, the good thing about tourism is that it's really the lifeblood of the economy. It's the biggest industry within St. Johns County and the biggest employer really in terms of the industry itself. If you're looking at government is going to be the biggest employer overall, but you have all these other small mom and pop restaurants that might hire 20 to 50 people at a time, and they're really going to reign supreme over all the government employees here. We're the nation's oldest city. We've been traded between 4 different countries over the origin of the city, so we have a little bit of everything. There's a little bit of like a New Orleans flair, a little bit of French in there, there's a little Spanish, there's a little bit of English, there's a little bit of something for everybody here in town.
You know,
And that's why we have the frustrations of so many people coming here, is because it offers up a lot if you're going on vacation, whether it's a family-friendly vacation or a romantic getaway with someone. There's a ton of things to do here, whether that's going to check out the beautiful architecture, going to one of the museums here in town, going out to eat. There's just so much to do here in town that it really makes it an attractive place to live, but there's pros and cons to that. Now, I think the majority of this is going to be surrounded around Villano Beach, downtown St. Augustine Beach. That's where the main touristy areas are going to be because people want to go to the beach, right? They want to enjoy that. They want to enjoy the historic downtown, and that's where the main tourism is. So if you live outside of those areas, it doesn't really apply to you, and you probably wouldn't even notice it unless you want to go downtown for any given reason. And now a lot of locals, they look at going downtown like it's too much of a hassle, especially during peak tourist season. So as of right now, it's September, so there is a little bit of lull, so you'll see a lot more locals going downtown than they typically would. But once we get into November and December, we have Night of Lights, which is it's been ranked the top 10 Christmas lights to see during the year, and it's really beautiful, but at the same time, there's just so much traffic between November and December that as a local, I'm not going down there at all. Unless I'm walking, because it'll actually be faster for me to walk there than it would be to take a car and find parking. And as a local that lives here, you're not really super stoked about that because you want to enjoy the downtown while it's nice and cool out like everyone else does. The good thing is that you can do that in January as well, where really everyone goes back to school, the holidays are over, and January, the Night of Lights continues through the end, so the locals actually do get to enjoy it when that time of year comes around. Now we also have spring break and summer, and those are another point of peak times throughout the year where you're going to have some trouble getting around downtown finding parking, but none of them compare to the monstrosity of Night of Lights, in my opinion. I would say Night of Lights is the worst part of the year, and I would consider it very similar to like watching the ball drop in Times Square or something like that. It's just like body to body with people. It's very, very tight. Whole bunch of people down there checking it out. And it's cool to see because I love seeing local businesses do well, but at the same time, I also want to go and have dinner and hang out downtown. And when you can't find parking and you gotta wait 45 minutes for a restaurant, it's a little disheartening and you tend not to go. And the fourth reason you may not want to move to St. Augustine is going to be the weather. Now, we actually do have great weather year-round. I actually saw a graph recently, which I'll throw up here, that compares us to like Southern California in terms of how many days we have that are considered nice. And I really do believe that, like outside of summer, our weather here is pretty much like 75 to 85, beautiful and sunny outside, right? Summer, of course, we're in Florida. It's a tropical climate. It's going to get hot, right? And it's going to be 90 degrees, 95 degrees with 100% humidity. Like you walked out and you're breathing the air and you're tasting the water, and it's pretty crazy how thick that air can get. And even sometimes when I travel to the Northeast and then I come back and I get into like Orlando or the Jax Airport, you walk out, and for me now it's like a sense of comfort. I come out and I feel that humidity. I'm like, I'm home. But if you're not from here, it's definitely going to be a little bit of a shock to the system, especially your first summer around here. So as I mentioned, the summer does get extremely hot, but with that we have rain almost every single day. And that's because I just feel like it's the world kind of saying like, hey, we need to kind of cool this thing off a little bit. So around 4 or 5 o'clock, we'll get a shower for about 30 minutes or so, and then it'll clear up and it'll be bright and sunny like it never even rained that day. It'll dry up all the water and it'll really be nice. But For the most part, it's going to be hot and muggy, and then after that rain, it's going to be even more muggy for the rest of the day, and that's for about 3 months of the year. Then outside of summer, then we also have hurricane season, and if you're not from here, you know, hurricanes could be very scary to you. Of course, we see all the horror stories on the news when stuff happens, flooding and wind damage, and just whole neighborhoods being completely wiped out, and that's definitely a risk that we have here living in Florida, yet many people don't live in fear of that risk, especially if they're a local. Typically, if a hurricane is below a Category 3, most people aren't really doing anything. You know, schools and a lot of things will be closed the next day, but most people are just hanging out at home, batting down the hatches, and really just hanging out. If you're in a flood zone, a little bit different of a reaction. You're probably going to do some flood preparation for your house, maybe getting some sandbags from the county, maybe evacuating off the island. But really, if it's before a Category 3 and it's not during king tide, which is during September, you're more than likely going to stay where you are. Now, anything over that Category 3 or a direct hit by a hurricane, yeah, there is definitely going to be some evacuation procedures, and St. Johns County will let you know if you should evacuate or not, and they'll even tell you, like, hey, if you don't evacuate and this hurricane comes by, too bad, so sad, we're not coming to get you, right? So they're giving people notice, like, hey, you need to get off the island if you are living here and there is a direct hit coming with a Category 4 hurricane. And just to add a little anecdotal story to this, my great-grandparents bought a piece of property on the Intercoastal in 1977. They're originally from New Jersey. My grandparents inherited that. My great-grandparents put a double-wide trailer on it. When they passed, my grandparents put a double-wide trailer on it. Neither of them have flown away or floated away. Just a couple hurricanes ago, we did have a good bit of flooding where it came up to like the skirt of the trailer, but nothing in the house was damaged. The house didn't move at all. Everything was fine. And if you're worried about your house being blown away, I think that's more of a tornado thing for sure, maybe a Category 5 hurricane as well. But if there's one house that would fly away, it'd be a double-wide trailer sitting on concrete blocks, and it hasn't yet. So that's obviously an anecdotal story. It's right on the Intercoastal, so if anything's going to flood, it should flood, but something for you guys to know. And with all this bad weather, I'd like to cover the good at front, but of course we have summers which are super hot, we have hurricanes. It's part of living here in Florida, and part of living here in Florida as well is going to be the no-see-ums and mosquitoes. This year has been terrible with the no-see-ums, or gnats as some people would call them, where they're flying and they're buzzing around your ears, they're flying in your eyes, and you can't get relief. You're walking around, you're on the phone, if you're outside, you're pretty much fighting them at all constant point. And typically that's only for like a month or two out of the year, but through the summer, where I would say it was about 3 months of just having these gnats just swarming your face and your body, which is very annoying. On top of that, we do also have mosquitoes here. We live in a tropical climate, so if you are worried about mosquitoes and any of the diseases that they carry, that could be a big hinge point for you on whether you move or not. But in general, St. Johns County actually has won awards for its mosquito control. They even have a mosquito control museum here that you can take your kids to, and it's an interactive museum. Apparently it's $1 million. I don't know who really wanted that, but we have it here. And if you do have any mosquitoes on your property, St. Johns County will actually come out and take care of it for free if you give them a call. Now, this is another thing to note, especially if you're white like me and you look like this. The UV here is much higher than many other areas in the country. So for me, I can be out at the beach for about 30 minutes and I have to reapply sunscreen pretty much on a half-hour to an hour basis, unless I want to get a nice burn later on. So that UV index is much higher here, so just be aware of that while you're going outside here. Put some sunscreen on. Make sure you're protected. No one wants you to get skin cancer. And the fifth thing that may lead you to St. Augustine is going to be the costs here in St. Augustine. We're talking about housing, we're talking about entertainment, we're talking about going out to eat. All these things have become much more expensive, especially in the last 4 years than they were prior. Now, here in St. Johns County, there is a variety of housing options, but our median sale price is $500,000. That doesn't mean that you can't find a single family home for $300,000. I bought a single family home in West Augustine for $300,000. It's only 1,100 square feet, but it's a brand new construction home for $300,000. Pretty much anywhere in the country, you're gonna have a hard time finding that if you live 20 minutes to the beach. I actually live 10 to 15 minutes depending on traffic, and I'm about a 4-minute drive into downtown St. Augustine. So I'd say $300,000 isn't bad. But the median sale price within St. Johns County is going to be $500,000. So if you're living on Anastasia Island, you're living downtown, you're living in Volano, or if you're living in the northern part of the county, you're going to see an elevated housing cost compared to the rest of the county. And that's part of the issues that we talked about earlier with the teachers and schools and people that live here are like, man, it's just so much unaffordable than it was just many years ago. Our housing prices have increased 60% since 2019. So it has changed very quickly. So give them some grace, give the locals some grace, because things have changed rapidly. With that as well, and it's no secret that insurance costs have gone up. Now, for the most part here in northeastern Florida, we weren't hit as hard as the southern part of Florida. South Florida really has a lot more increases in their insurance premiums than we've seen here in northeastern Florida, but it's still happening, especially if you live on the water or if you're in a flood zone outside of flood zone X. Everything in Florida is in flood zone X, right? That's the least one. That's where you're not required to have flood insurance. Anything above flood zone X, you're going to be required to have flood insurance if you have a mortgage on your property. And depending on the elevation of your home, the age of the home, all these things factor into how much is this going to cost you on an annual basis to have flood insurance just in case. It's really hard for me to give you a number on this because it really just depends on a whole bunch of variety of factors, flood zone, age of home, elevation of the home, and without knowing that specifically, I can't give you an accurate detail of what that is. But if you are interested in a specific property and you want to know what's going on, you can always reference the FEMA flood map, and then you can take that information. You can either reach out to me, or you can reach out directly to an insurance provider here in Florida, and they should be able to give you a roundabout number of what that'll look like. And another one of those costs that have just gone up, and it's not just here, it's pretty much everywhere in the nation because of inflation. But costs on going out to eat and getting a bite has gone up. I mean, for like a turkey club sandwich and some chips, it's like $16 at many restaurants, which is kind of insane when like all of that probably used to be like $8 to $9 before 2020. So those prices have changed drastically. Downtown St. Augustine, they're catering to a luxury tourist base. So if you're going out for a cocktail in downtown St. Augustine anymore, there used to be just a whole bunch of dive bars in downtown. Now it's kind of all moved to like a higher end cocktail scene. So like the minimum cocktail that you'll see down there is going to be like 10 or 12 bucks. Are there a couple of bars in the area where you can still get a reasonably priced drink? 100%, but I think anymore they're going more towards a luxury experience and really, slapping the mint for your cocktail and delivering that 5-star high-end experience, which some people love, some people don't. I'm not really a big drinker, but to me it's like, hey, you're mixing a couple things. I don't see the difference of this being $5 versus it being $20, but that's just me. I'm pretty simple. And guys, that is it. Those are the top 5 reasons that you may not want to move to St. Augustine. And I tell you all this out of transparency, and that's how I am. That's how my team is as advisors to you guys, right? If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest, make sure you reach out to me and my team. We're not pushy salespeople. All we try to do is give you the information so that you can make an educated decision on what you want to do, which is buy, sell, or invest here in northeastern Florida. Until next time, guys, have a good one.